I'm Marion. Sitting at the head of the table, a glass of red wine halfway to my lips, I felt the world tilt on its axis. My mother-in-law, Isabella, looked around the table at her family, then fixed her cold eyes on me. I've come to realize I made a grave error in blessing this marriage. I believe my son, Leo, deserves better, and it's time to rectify this mistake. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at her, stunned, as she continued, calm and deliberate, as if announcing a business decision. I had no idea that behind my back, with Leo's quiet complicity, a plan had been brewing for months. A plan to take away my villa, funnel my income into accounts I couldn't control, and reduce me to a dependent in my own home. Let me take you back. I've spent the better part of the last decade building a successful marketing firm. It's not small, not struggling. With 15 full-time employees, a client list that includes several major tech startups, and an annual revenue that crossed the $3 million threshold last year, I've worked hard for what I have. I live in a beautiful villa on the outskirts of Oakwood. It was my grandmother's, Amelia. She was a strong-willed woman, a real estate mogul in her own right. When she passed away, she left the villa to me, along with a note that said, "This is your legacy, Marion. Hold on to it." I was 26 then, and I wept for days, not just from grief but from the weight of her trust. I refinished the floors, updated the kitchen, and maintained the beautiful rose garden she started. The house has 10 antique clocks, a quirk of hers that I've kept alive because the ticking feels like her heartbeat. I met Leo at a business conference in Miami. He was presenting on digital marketing strategies, and I was there for a leadership workshop. He was charming, with a warm smile and an easy confidence. We had dinner that night, and another a few days later. Within a couple of months, he came to Oakwood to see the villa. Standing on the porch at sunset, he said, "I get it now." I thought he meant he understood why I loved the place, but looking back, I wonder if he saw it as a prize. Our early years were wonderful. Leo was attentive, always bringing me flowers and making ordinary evenings feel special. We got married at the villa, surrounded by family and friends. It was the happiest day of my life. Isabella came to the wedding from New York, where she lived in a penthouse that Leo was secretly helping to pay for. She was 63, elegant but cold, with a sharp tongue and a penchant for luxury. At the reception, she kissed my cheeks and said I looked beautiful, but there was an insincerity in her voice that I noted and stored away. In the first year of our marriage, Isabella visited 3 times. Each visit lasted a week or so, and Leo always said she just needed some family time. She was never warm towards me, always hovering in a zone of mild condescension. She'd question my cooking methods, suggest redecorating the garden, and casually refer to the villa as Leo's. About a year and a half into our marriage, I started to cover more of the household expenses. Not because Leo couldn't contribute, but because I was earning more, and it seemed easier. I paid the villa's maintenance fees, the property taxes, and even bought Isabella a new car when Leo mentioned she was having financial trouble. The first sign of trouble came on a Friday evening. I had been working late on a big project and came home exhausted. As I opened the door, I was hit with the smell of Isabella's cooking. She had let herself in with the spare key Leo kept in his car. "There you are, dear," she said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Leo said you'd be tired, so I made you dinner." Leo was sitting at the kitchen table, not looking up with much enthusiasm. The evening was uncomfortable. Isabella talked about her social events in New York and how she thought our life in Oakwood was too quiet. I ate in silence, counting the clocks and waiting for the night to end. Before she left, she stood in the living room and looked around. "Such a beautiful house," she said. "It would be a shame if something happened to it." I didn't understand what she meant, and when I asked Leo later, he just said, "She's just talking, Marion. Don't worry." Over the next few months, things got worse. Isabella started calling the house phone, usually when she knew I'd be at the office. When I asked Leo about the calls, he was vague. "Just catching up," he'd say. One day, I came home early because a meeting was cancelled. I heard Leo on the phone in his study, the door slightly ajar. I heard him say, "Not yet. I need more time." And then, "She won't agree to that, Mom." I stood there, frozen, for a few seconds. When he heard me, his tone changed, and he said, "Anyway, I should go. Love you." As time went on, Isabella started staying at the villa instead of at a hotel. She was a meticulous guest, but there was an air of proprietorship about her. She rearranged the furniture in the living room and moved a painting that had been in my family for generations. When I moved it back, she just moved it again. I started to pay closer attention. I began keeping a record of Isabella's visits and the odd phone conversations. I downloaded 6 months of our joint account statements and went through them line by line. I found a pattern of small withdrawals, always around $200 or $300, on days when Isabella visited or when Leo talked to her. Over 6 months, they totaled over $5,000. I also noticed that Isabella seemed to know too much about my business finances. She mentioned the exact amount of our latest client acquisition in a casual conversation, something she shouldn't have known. She'd ask about the villa's future, in a way that made me uncomfortable. The breaking point came on Isabella's 65th birthday. Leo had planned a big dinner at the villa, inviting Isabella's sister, Grace, and her husband, Henry, and Isabella's old friend, Victoria. I bought Isabella an expensive diamond necklace, and I set the table with the finest china and crystal. We were in the middle of dinner when Isabella put down her fork and said, "I've been thinking. I made a mistake in allowing this marriage. Leo deserves someone more in line with our family's values." The table went silent. Grace looked at her plate, Henry pretended to be interested in his wine, and Victoria's expression was unsurprised. Leo stared at the table, not meeting my eyes. I took a deep breath and said, "I see. And what does rectifying this mistake look like to you?" Isabella smiled, a cold smile. "There are arrangements we could make regarding the property and assets. It would make the transition smoother for everyone." I turned to Leo. "Did you know she was going to say this?" He paused for a few seconds, then said, "We've discussed some options." I pressed him for details, and bit by bit, the whole scheme came out. They had been planning to refinance the villa, with Isabella as a partial beneficiary. Leo had spoken to a lawyer about adding her name to the deed, and he had inquired about the villa's current value without my knowledge. I felt a cold calm wash over me. I remembered my grandmother's note and the legacy she left me. I stood up and said, "I've spoken to my attorney. The villa is in my name, and it will stay that way. There will be no refinancing, no co-ownership. Any attempt to file unauthorized documents will be treated as fraud." I also announced that I would be separating our joint finances. Isabella was shocked, but I didn't care. I walked into Leo's study and called my lawyer, Linda. She had been my legal advisor for 10 years, and she answered on the second ring. I told her everything: the meetings with the lawyer, the deed inquiries, the cash withdrawals. Linda walked me through our next steps. She assured me that we could protect my assets. The following days were filled with conflict. Leo tried to explain, saying he was pressured by Isabella, but I knew he had made his own choices. I separated our finances, drained the joint account of my contributions, and verified that no changes had been made to the villa's deed. I also contacted Leo's employer, a large marketing agency called Starlight Marketing. I spoke to the CEO, Richard, and informed him about Leo's misuse of company resources for personal financial scheming. He was shocked but promised to investigate. A few weeks later, Leo was let go from his job. He came home one evening and said he wanted to talk. He apologized, saying he made a mistake. I told him that sorry wasn't enough. I asked him to move out for a while so we could both think clearly. He left on the 1st of the month, taking a few boxes and his laptop. The clocks in the house kept ticking, a constant reminder of the past. The final confrontation was in the courthouse. Isabella was served with a civil complaint, alleging fraud and conspiracy. Her face crumbled when she saw the evidence. Her lawyer negotiated a settlement where she renounced any claim to the villa and agreed to repay the money she had taken from the joint account. Over the next few months, Leo and I had several conversations. By Christmas, I knew our marriage was over. We filed for divorce in February. It was a quiet process, without much drama. As spring came, I sat on the porch, sipping coffee. The roses were starting to bloom, and the antique clocks were ticking inside. My father called and asked how I was. I looked at the garden and said, "I'm good. I'm myself again." He laughed and said, "Your grandmother would be proud." I knew he was right. I had fought for what was mine, and I had one. Some houses you build, some you fight for, and this one was truly mine.